The lesson today is called The Call of Commitment. We're going to talk about commitment today. And I would like to start with an illustration about a college man who walked into a photography studio with a framed picture of his brand new girlfriend, pretty girl. And he wanted the picture duplicated. I want a copy of this. This involved, of course, taking the pictures off the frame. And in doing so, the studio owner noticed that on the back of the picture, it was a note. And the note said, "To my dearest Tom, I love you with all my heart. I love you more and more each day. I will love you forever and ever. I am yours forever in eternity." By the name, the name of the boyfriend was not Tom, okay? And he had a P.S. He said, "If we ever break up, I want this picture back." Did you get that? Okay, so my question is, how many of you think that she was not really totally serious about that note, totally committed about how serious she was about Tom being fully in love with him? So God, we talk about commitment, and God certainly loves commitment, and that's, I believe, why He included actually the story of Ruth in the Bible. It's a great lesson of commitment, the way that Ruth, the relationship that she had with a mother-in-law, Naomi. You think that daughter-in-law should not get along with mother-in-laws, but this is an example here how that is not the case. In short verses, Ruth tells her mother-in-law, Naomi, that I'll never leave you. I won't turn away from you. I will go where you go. I'll stay where you stay. Where you die, that's what I'll die. And by the way, Ruth was not one like that lady in the picture. I mean, she really meant it, and she followed through, if you know the story of Ruth. But some people use this verse actually in Ruth to put them into their wedding vows. And Lisa says, yes, you remember? Lisa actually had part of the vows in just the same from the book of Ruth here. I remember Lisa was very serious about commitment. She went and got a book about it, about vows. And I said, boy, she's really serious about commitments. Because that's what you do. If you really want, if you're serious about commitment, if you're serious about any topic, you get a book about it, right? And it's true. You can tell a lot about a person looking by the kind of books that he has in his library. And if he doesn't, that's another sign. But yeah, so, right. Some actually engrave this on their jewelry to communicate their undying love and devotion. So people recognize the value of commitment in marriage, and so does God. So does God. So Jesus actually said in Mark chapter 10, verse 9, what God has joined together, let no man separate. And I'll tell you, the lesson today is primarily about commitment because Lisa, last week, she called me and she was crying. I said, honey, what's going on? Why are you crying? She said, Yura, you're not going to believe there's this person, they are divorcing. And this person happens to be a Christian. The wife happened to be a Christian. Not sure she's Christian now. It appears that she left the church. And big drama happening in that family. This is supposed to be a couple with living, growing in the church. The woman, for that matter, she's not just some loose woman that you can consider. She was the daughter of a gospel preacher. So this is a very established family, should be a faithful family, raising faithful children. And unfortunately, none of that. And Lisa could not control her emotions. It's not the only. Lately, I know at least about another couple last week that I heard that they are getting a divorce. And this is, again, Christians. Used to be a member of the congregation, not in this group here, but in another congregation close to us. So it's very sad, and I wanted us to really focus a bit on what it means to have commitment in marriage, and what does that mean. And I'm going to speak certainly to everybody, as all of us should understand commitment, but primarily it's going to be geared towards all of you that are in a relationship right now, or even for younger people. And we have several people here in the congregation. Jake start with you, Jason, Elena, Amelia, so many others. I mean, everybody, every little person, every person that is not married. I didn't call Amelia a little person. Eventually, no. Eventually, when the time comes and when you find the right person, then it's very important for us to understand commitment. So again, why is commitment important? Because it's important to God. In Mark chapter 10 verse 9, God there says, what God has joined together, let no man separate. And that means including you, if that marriage is yours. That is a direct commandment from God that says, whatever God joined, let there be no man to separate that union, to break that union. Of course, there's an exception. We're not going to talk about that today. What does it mean if one person cheats against the others and they have the right to divorce and remarry? I'm not going to go into that. It's still because the law of God was broken, because there was cheating and infidelity involved. But the law of God really includes, when you talk about commitment, says whatever God has joined together, let no man separate. Man or woman, let no man separate. So in Malachi, as a matter of fact, in chapter 2, verse 16, God showed how much total commitment in marriage he meant when he declared, I hate divorce. So why is such loyalty important to God between a husband and wife? Do you know? There is a reason, actually. It's shared in scriptures. So, first, because God regards marriage as his creation, not man. Man did not invent marriage. God created marriage. Marriage is an institution designed by God. God made man and woman, put them together, join them together, husband and wife, and that's how God ordained it. Men had nothing, of course, men as usual, they try to mess with the plan of God, but God established it very clear in his word what marriage is defined. Nowadays, people like to redefine marriage and they believe there's 35 genders and all that, but it's really not what God had in mind. God intended for marriage, one man, one woman for life. That's what God intended. So when Pharisees changed Jesus, if divorce was permissible, if you remember, he replied, haven't you read that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one. And he goes further to say, therefore what God has joined together, as we said, even in Matthew repeats, earlier was from Mark, let no man separate. So marriage was God's idea, not our idea. God's idea. I'm going to put this thing on, so, okay, that's better. Don't have to talk so loud now. Very good. So secondly, because God values undying devotion. Maybe I need to speak quieter so I don't break your tympanic membrane. Okay, let me know. You can say, hey, dial it down. Everybody in the back seat. Okay, so God, I like to variate my pitch in voice because otherwise I sound boring. You don't want to speak like la, 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 la. It's very important to just kind of go up and down so that way I keep you awake. I don't want you to fall asleep. Okay. So God values undying devotion. Sometimes I pause, and that's for effect, right? Very good. So secondly, God values undying devotion in marriage because he desires couple to have godly children. Did you know that? The fact that God desires godly children, that's one of the reasons why God values devotion among husbands and wife. Pay attention to Malachi. I know you read it before, but I really want you to pay attention to this verse here. Very powerful passage. This says, so in Malachi, this is God speaking. It says, has not the Lord made them one in flesh and spirit? They are his. And why one? Why one? Because he was seeking godly offspring. You understand that? God made them one, and then here he says because he is seeking godly offspring. It's very hard to have godly offspring when one person goes one way and the other person goes the other way. It is very hard. And unfortunately, in this day and age, the idea of divorce and separating and going your own way and be happy and just do whatever you want is so prevalent there that people, it doesn't take much to just go the opposite way and then break the family, no longer one. And it's very sad. It's becoming like second nature, like no big deal. I was in Romania a few months ago, if you remember, and on the street, and it's not just in this country, by the way. It's everywhere you go. I mean, this is in Europe, okay, where I lived there for like half my life. A neighbor on the street, I was asking him, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? He's got like 3 kids and married for a number of years. And he was looking at me with such serious note, you know, how is your wife? And you know what he says to me? He says to me, I want to switch my wife. I want to get another wife. He's like, what? Are you serious? Yeah, I want to get a wife that's younger. Somebody that's, you know, I'm bored with my current wife. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, it's just no longer so exciting anymore, right? So, and I thought he was joking, but the more I was talking to him, it's like, no, you can't do that. You know, you love your wife, you know. It's for life. Of course, he's not a Christian, but happens to be a Muslim for that matter, but it doesn't matter whatever nation you are. God has instituted marriage, and you know it's critical that the two are together. And the most important thing is that because by them being together, by them being devoted to one another, then guess what? You accomplish what God is seeking of having godly offspring. There's a direct correlation between a husband and wife being together and having godly offspring. I don't know about you, but my number one goal in life is to go to heaven. And right there, right in the same level, still number one goal to life is to get my family in heaven with me. I know that when you're going to go to heaven, you're going to be happy and it's going to be all wonderful and you're going to forget everything is bad. But I don't imagine how I can be myself in heaven and be happy if my kids are not there, if my wife is not there. I mean, it's a devastating idea. I have a friend of mine, he's got 4 kids, one of my most favorite gospel preacher, and one of his kids is not faithful. And every time I meet him, every time I bump into him, there is this sadness on his face that nothing would take it away. And that is because he knows in his heart that one of his child is not going to heaven right now. But if the 2 parents, and he, by the way, he's very happily married, he's got an awesome relationship with his wife, but if the 2 separate, the idea of having godly offspring goes down very fast. Down very fast. I have another friend of mine, gospel preacher, that has 4 kids. He passed away. 4 kids. Every single one of his 4 kids fallen away. Their grandkids fallen away, or not Christians in the beginning too. Speaking of the family that Lisa was crying about earlier, and by the way, they live somewhere in Wisconsin. Where are you from? Husband and wife, after being married for how many years? 20 years? 25 years? 25 years? They're separating now. And guess how many of their 3 children are faithful right now? 0, not 1. They either fallen away or have never obeyed the gospel. All in all, not godly offspring. So if you care about your children, you're going to do whatever you need to do to make sure that you're not going to go the path of divorce. You think marriage is hard? Anybody here thinks that marriage is hard? Lisa, first one to raise your hand. Thank you, honey. Yes, marriage is hard. But you know what is harder? Divorce is harder. So choose your poison. Choose your hard. But whatever path you do, just know that devotion, undying devotion in marriage, is what leads to having godly offspring or not having godly offspring, or some kind of mixed, maybe some are godly, some are not perfect. So in describing his love for Israel, actually God used marriage as a model of relationship with his people. In Ezekiel chapter 16 verse 8 says, when I looked at you and saw that you were old enough for love, I spread the corner of my garment over you. God is speaking there to the people, to his people. And he says, I gave you my solemn oath and enter into a covenant with you, declares the sovereign Lord, and you became mine. That's how God regards the relationship with his people. Solemn covenant. You became mine. So, and in the New Testament, Jesus used the image of himself as the groom and the church as the bride. In Matthew 22 verse 2 says, the kingdom of God is like a king who prepares a wedding banquet for his son. That is the relationship that we have with Christ, is that of a husband and a wife. And because Jesus, in a sense, is our husband, we have this powerful promise. In Hebrews 13 verse 5, it says, I will never leave you, never will I forsake you. So that creates the idea of commitment that there is in that union of marriage, in that union of joint marriage. And that should also exist in the union that we have, that we create here in marriage. That when we marry with each other, we have that idea, make that commitment that I will never leave you nor forsake you. Never, never. When me and my wife got married, she read a full book. I didn't read it, but I agree with everything she said. Okay, honey, whatever vows you want, no problem. I agree. Where do I sign? Right? Right. But I'll tell you, we made a commitment that divorce will never be and never come up with us. I know that as far as I'm concerned, I will never divorce my wife unless I'm struck with some kind of mind. You can come and shoot me if I develop some kind of brain disease, amoeba, eating your brain cells. I don't know. Not going there. But I'll tell you, one is because of it's a commandment of God, and two is because of what divorce does to children. I don't know about you. I've had sometimes conversation with my kids, and my kids are all, a little bit older now, but every time the idea of divorce remotely occurs in their brain, they are terrified of it. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to my son, and I was trying to tell him that in a hypothetical, what it would be if me and Lisa would divorce. And my son is like, I don't even want to hear it. Don't even talk about it. It's like, not even in a hypothetical way. Because it does something to them just by thinking about it. It's such an impossible thought to consider. Devastating. Devastating. So that promise, again, it's an echo of the words that Ruth used with Naomi. So what kind of commitment is necessary for a strong marriage? The first is commitment to God. Ruth said, very important, we gloss over this, but Ruth there says, your God shall be my God. You understand that? So to have a commitment, you have to have the same God. There is an interesting piece of romantic thinking. Say, if I find the right one, the one I really am attracted to, the one who I love, and the one who loves me, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what they believe, or doesn't matter whether they're a Christian or not, whether they go to church or not, or even if they love God or not. So many people in that day and age think that it doesn't matter. I feel in my heart that the right person for me, God doesn't matter, religion doesn't matter. They could be from any religion. It doesn't matter. Well, it does. It really does. They say that all that matters is chemistry that exists between us, right? We'll work the church thing out later. After all, they say, shouldn't this religious issue, they shouldn't get in the way of true love, right? True love. That's not true love. True love is not really based on fluttery emotion. That's very like a veneer, very thin layer. Because you know what? You think of true love like that, and then 3 months pass, 12 months pass, now all of a sudden the butterflies are gone, and then you're stuck with that person. What about the love? Well, it's a lot more than just that feeling. A lot more than that feeling. So to those in love, this seems so right, so natural. If that approach is so right, then why does God say in 2 Corinthians 6:14 through 16, do not be yoked together with unbelievers? For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? Some people take this passage and says, this doesn't mean that, you cannot marry a non-Christian. This doesn't mean that you cannot, this doesn't apply to marriage. You can believe whatever you want. As far as I'm concerned, I believe what the scripture says. And this it says here, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. And as far as I'm concerned, there's no yoking more serious than the yoking of a husband and wife. Because if you are unequally yoked with your spouse, good luck. It's going to be hard. You're going to go one direction, they're going to go the other direction. It's going to be so hard. You can say, well, it can be done. Good luck. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I am not doing it. Further on, it says, what harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Look at the comparisons. What does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? Of course, rhetorical question. The answer is nothing. For we are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will live with them and walk among them, and I will be their God and they will be my people. Yeah. You're ready to go to church one morning and your wife says, I don't think so. The kids are going to be confused. You're going to be confused. Come on, honey, let's go to church. Oh, I'm tired. You're not going to go very far, and not just to church, but anywhere. Anywhere. In raising children, your wife is going to do that. In achieving any kind of success. If you're going to go on one path, totally different value system, your husband and wife, they're going to be sitting down, come on, honey, we got to go. No, it's okay. And kids, by the way, you can sleep too. You don't have to go either. Yeah. But then if both husband and wife get up in the morning, every morning, because they know that every Sunday you go to church, guess what? The kids are not going to wonder, do we go to church today or not? Right, John? The kids are going to know. In my household, there's never, the only way you don't go to church is if you are in the hospital bed or if you are laying in bed on OxyContin with pain 9 out of 10, potentially with kidney stone. And I have to say, check, you can stay home. Doesn't happen very often, thankfully. My kids know that every single Sunday morning, when they hear Daddy's shower turned off, that means time to get out of bed. They do know that. Because if they don't, I'm going to pour water on top of their heads. That's what I had to do almost with my son this morning. But he got up. There's no question. You know what you're going to do. You just do it. There's no alternative. You don't get up on Sunday morning and play computer games. You don't sleep in. I don't care what time you went to bed, by the way. You get up. You get up. You're not sitting there like that, whatever you call it. So, don't be yoked together with unbelievers. Why should God care? After all, you can say my fiancé isn't really a wicked person. In fact, they're pretty nice ones, person once you get to know them. And besides, you can say, isn't it nice? That you can convert your spouse to Christianity. What an awesome way to evangelize. Some people say that. We'll convert them to Christ after marriage. God wouldn't object that, would he? God certainly objects. So the practical reason for only dating and marrying Christians is reflected actually in Paul's question, what does a believer have in common with a non-believer? And what does Paul mean by that? Does he mean that Christians and non-Christians can enjoy the same music? No. As long as it's clean music, you can love the same music. You know, you can appreciate the same art. You can go to vacations, whatever place in Hawaii you want to. There's a lot of things that Christians have in common with non-Christians, right? You can go work at the same place with non-Christians and so forth. But what Paul means is that when it comes to things of God, a Christians and a non-Christians don't pull in the same direction. Right? Christian pull this way, the world pulls the other way. You yoke together, you're going to be in trouble. And you're going to send such crazy mixed messages to your kids that they're going to be so confused and not know what to do before they end up whatever they want to do. Like there was a choice. There wasn't. Choice is heaven or hell. And I don't know about you, but for me and for my wife, my family, hell is not a choice. We made a decision. We're going to heaven. Right, guys? In the back, in the cheap seats there? Thank you. That's the message. We believe in that. That's where we're going. We committed to each other. We committed to God. We committed in the family. So, because of your faith, because your faith will pull you in a different direction that your non-Christian spouse, that faith may end up being even the source of division rather than strength of your marriage. So the end result of your being married to an unbeliever may be that one of you will have to change to bring harmony to the house. You know, that's what happens sometimes. One of the person eventually has to compromise, because otherwise you're going to have World War III every day. It might be that the non-Christian may say, okay, I give up, but maybe that they will be convert and be saved. That's possible. But too often it is the Christian who, for the sake of peace in the house, gives up their relationship with God for sake of their relationship with their spouse and for the sake of peace. That's what happened most of the time, as a matter of fact. And this doesn't mean that if you're married to a non-Christian, you should get a divorce, by the way. The scripture says if you want to live together, you have to be married with them continuing. Doesn't mean you divorce them. Unless you have no business marrying them in the first place and now you're living in adultery, because I'm not going to go there. There's a scenario like that. I'm not going to go there. But if you have a right to be married with that person, if the person is unbeliever, then you should stay married with them. That's the commandment from the Lord. However, to knowingly enter a marriage with an unbeliever creates a situation that will leave your union and your faith weak and threatened. Make no mistake about it. And your home will not be a small corner of heaven. You know what it will be? It will be a small corner of heaven some days, and a small corner of hell some days. It's kind of like you get a nice plate of food, right, John? And you got guacamole, and you have some burritos, and then you have a dead snake there, and a piece of roadkill, and that's going to be your marriage. Well, you can eat around it. That's what you do? No, thank you. Roadkill? With a little pico de gallo? No? Don't taste so good. No, thank you. No, thank you. So, by contrast, the more we and our spouses pull together towards God, the stronger our marriages will be. And statistics prove this to be true. So, I made this question below, right, guys? So, I mean, this triangle below. This is God, right? This is spouse. This is husband. Okay, this is husband, this is wife, okay? My handwriting is bad. Okay, so the more the person goes towards God, you understand that? The more they're going to go closer to each other. You see that? So that's why marriage is not a two-person ordeal. Marriage is a three-person ordeal. You cannot do marriage with two people. You have three people. God has to be in the middle. And statistics actually prove it. Did you know, according to statistics, this statistics were put together by a gentleman, his name is John Maxwell. He wrote a few books. This book is on family. He says that 1 out of 3 marriages end in divorce. 1 out of 3. This is to be generous, actually. This is like 30-something%. Actually, is higher than that. But he calculated that 1 out of 3 marriages, normal marriages in this country, end in divorce. But guess what? 1 out of 50 marriages end in divorce if the couple had a church wedding. Did you know that? If you have a church wedding, apparently, if you involve God in your union, then you incorporating God in that relationship of marriage from the beginning. 1 out of 50, you can say, oh, that's pretty good. That's better than 1 out of 3. But you know what? It's 1 out of 105 marriages actually end in divorce if the couple attend church regularly. Did you know that? That's like 1%. If you go to church and you attend church faithfully, 1% risk of getting a divorce. I don't know about you, but I'll keep on going to church. It gets better. 1 out of 1,105 marriages end in divorce if the couple attend church regularly and have family devotions. What does that mean? That means you attend church and you have Bible studies at home. Sometimes you have singing at home. Sometimes you talk to God about, you talk in the family about God. You bring God into your home. You have godly principles in your home. 0.1%. I don't know what category you want to be in, but I recommend that we are right here. That's why, for me and for my family, going to church, and you may say, well, it's easy for you. You are the gospel preacher, right? We pay you here. You have no choice. For those that don't know me, before I was in the pulpit, only to the glory of God, I made the commitment to attend church services regularly way before I was a gospel preacher. And I could probably count maybe on 2 hands how many times I've missed a worship service through my entire career of 27 years of being a Christian. And that's because I have a crazy, crazy good reason. Either kidney stone or because I made a commitment to myself, to my God, that nothing is going to come before God on Sunday morning. And then you just apply that. You don't let that derail you. Whatever happens, then you choose. You already made the decision. You don't have to wonder, what do I do today? You already made the decision. Just do it. Just do it. So, and that is because I don't want that 1 out of 3. And that's because I don't want to get a divorce. First, because it's devastating to your children above all. As far as I'm concerned, if you get a divorce, how do I say this lovingly? I don't really care about you. Whatever. You can do whatever you want. But I care about your children more, because the children will be casualties. Casualties. When I was to Romania, I met a family there. They were faithful at the time, although they attended very poorly, especially the husband, very poorly attended. Hardly ever been there at church. And even when he was there, had the biggest mouth. And then guess what? Then he was no longer faithful. And now they have 2 kids, and both of them are not faithful. Surprise, surprise. That's because the head of the family is not faithful. And make no mistake about it, fathers, because you have a powerful, powerful effect. If your family gets separated, if you end up having a divorce, if your family is not faithful to God, you better look yourself in the mirror and say, it's because of me. Because as men, you have a tremendous ability to lead your family to heaven. And do not blame anybody else. It's you. It's absolutely you. So, if you want a solid marriage, you and your spouse should be committed to God. And lastly, if you want our marriage to be permanent, we need to be committed to our spouse. You know, and it's not easy to always be committed to our spouses. I've been married to my wife about 20 years next year. And what I've learned is just don't take everything so serious, okay? Just, it's okay. You know, some days you'll have a bad day. Right, Rhett? It's all right. Don't take everything so serious. And the same thing when you raise your children. Take it easy, okay? It's not the end of the world. Make sure they're faithful. Make sure that you keep them grounded. Feed them, right? But don't have a coronary, you know, just because little things happen, okay? Just take it easy. Our attitude should be the same as that voice by Ruth, where he says, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I'll die, and where I will be buried, right? I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates me and you. That was the attitude of Ruth, and that should be our attitude when we face marriage and our commitment to our spouse and commitment to our marriage. In our society, according to a Gallup poll, 73% of those under 45 regarded the idea of being committed to one person for life as being useless and unworkable. Did you know that? Yeah. So without God, commitment to one person for life is difficult. It's true. Because you don't have God here, you're not going towards God. Where do you think you're going to be going? Not anywhere placed together close you're going. You're not. So yes, even for the most committed husband and wife, there comes a time when they see someone else across the crowded room who is prettier or handsome, and say, I wonder how it is to be married with that person. Yeah. That's just human nature. Human nature. And for a brief ugly moment, I call it, they wonder, boy, what if I was married to that person? She's pretty. So, yeah, conclusion. Without God, commitment is not natural. It's hard to understand commitment without God. Without God, you can just divorce as many times as you want. I was reading an article this past week about some Hollywood superstar got married. I don't know why I opened it. I was just bored, I guess. And I opened it, and it's like, sure enough, this person's been married this many times. This person's been married this many times. It's like, okay, just providing the news. It's like, okay, I'm just like the normal just life, right? It's like, how many times this person, oh, this is his third person's marriage, and this is a fourth person's marriage. But hey, say the vows, for better or worse, till death do us part. All kinds of butterflies, right? Then 6 months later, 3 years later, looking for some other Prince Charming that's better. So, yes, without God, no commitment will be possible. What's natural in a godless society is to be self-centered and self-seeking. If you don't seek God, you're not going to go towards each other either. And final point, in a godless society, commitment is seen as unnatural. But for God's people, commitment is part of something. Can't believe it. Okay, it's right here. Part of who we are. Mark saw it. Thank you. Hey, I made it. And my computer blasted. I still have 12%. Very good. That was my lesson today. But if you're here today and you have not a strong commitment to God and you're not a Christian, I encourage you to review your commitment to God. And if there's anything we can do to have you brought to God and have that commitment with Him, or maybe you have been in a place in your past that your commitment to God has gotten cold. We want to invite you to renew that commitment and be with God in that commitment that you ought to have. So if anybody is subject to the invitation, please come forward as Bradley will lead us in a closing song.